Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday morning D&D show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucien from Sir Lucien Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, welcome everybody to another Saturday morning. It's gonna be a good one.
It is going to be a good one. It is a hostful episode as we have no guest, but it is full of hosts.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have not a lot of D&D news to talk about, like in the news, but we both played a bunch of games this week. So we'll have that to talk about, which should be really good. And I should talk about this, little banter beforehand. I went and saw Ready Player One yesterday.
I think I want to go tonight. But
And
yeah, go ahead.
yes, you should definitely go. The book, it is heads and tails different from the book. Like it's the same kind of idea. But the three little paths he goes on to find these keys, to find these Easter eggs, are completely different in the movie. But I really enjoyed it. Like I thought it was like super fun. I don't know. It was really engaging and just full of like nerdy references and stuff. Not enough D&D references, but there's a couple in there that was like, oh, that's awesome.
Like a pop culture extravaganza of stuff to kind of go nostalgia over or even relevant over and like, oh, look at that. So,
no, it totally is. And I went with my wife and she was freaking out because they had like, there's like a little scene where Hello Kitty and Hello Kitty's friends are like walking in the background. And she was like a huge Hello Kitty fan, I guess, back in the day. So she was like, what? And freaking out. So
yeah, you can get all those fandoms come together in one thing. That's crazy.
But
they're probably all owned by Disney at this point.
Say what?
They're probably all owned by Disney at this point.
Yeah. Disney owns, what is it? 40% of the movie industry now, I read. I'm just like, that is a monopoly. Like after they acquired Fox and something else, they own 40% of the movie industry, which just feels crazy to me. But hello, chat. We've got Karza, we've got the Dawn Seeker, we've got Darkside. This is nice to see you guys hanging out with us this wonderful Saturday morning.
Indoor
adventure. What was I going to talk about? So literally right before we started record.
The video. You wanted to talk about your little video in the beginning.
Oh, I did. Thank you. So we have this is why we're good co-hosts, because I forget what I'm talking about. But for the people on YouTube that are commenting that the intro is too long, I totally understand, because most of the intros on videos on YouTube are like maybe 5 seconds. So I totally get this. And there's been a couple people who have said, please like shorten the intro. But when I say a couple, I literally mean that. We've had 2 people complain about it. And on the other side, I've had a bunch of other people tell me that they love the intro and that I should keep it the same way. So I hear you, people that are like, hey, this is too long for YouTube. But I also understand that the majority of people seem to enjoy the intro and you can skip it. So this is my compromise, is that I don't care if you watch the intro. It's always going to be the same 30 seconds. You can just fast forward a little bit. And I hope that's okay. I hope that's a nice compromise. So maybe we won't see comments like that anymore about the intro being too long, or maybe we will. But we're going to keep it the same. So don't worry for all those people who enjoy the intro.
The majority rules on Saturday morning D&D show.
Yeah. And then, okay. So what else are we jumping into here? There was something else I wanted to talk about, and I completely am spacing it now. The intro was one thing. I
remember you mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, well, it'll come to me in a little bit. But Mr. Lucien, what did you do in D&D this week?
Been a pretty busy week. Started off with a little bit of Storm King's Thunder is on a hiatus, our Monday night show. So what I ended up doing was I jumped on Twitch and we did a Let's Brainstorm campaign ideas. We had a couple people join in and throw out some really cool ideas for if I was going to run another short mini campaign, what kind of ideas would we have? And it was different from like maybe some different types of games, maybe some different type of genres, or maybe just a theme to the game of like, maybe there's no magic, or maybe there's a Monster Hunter International, or maybe there's a pretty standard Numenera game, or what are some different things we can do in Dungeons & Dragons. Somebody threw out a Groundhog Day kind of adventure, and I just thought that would be interesting, where you have a really tough set of complex things the players need to do, and it's meant for them to die a few times, but every time they all die, it resets, and they get a chance to go back at it again and see if they can find another way. And then the twist to it was whatever XP they earned, they keep. So all the experience they're getting, and maybe they're getting tougher, and maybe they get more hit dice, or maybe they get more spells, and then finally they get through it. I thought that was kind of a cool idea for an adventure I hadn't thought about doing in a Dungeons and Dragons one. So that was kind of cool. So it was always fun to get onto Twitch and just brainstorm with people. And so that was our Monday night.
You haven't listened to you haven't listened to the Adventure Zone, or have you heard of the Adventure Zone?
I've heard of them. I have not listened to many.
So the McElroy brothers run a podcast called My Brother and Me, and that's a fun podcast too, not D&D related. But they, through that podcast, were just like, we should play D&D. And so they started a D&D podcast called The Adventure Zone. And they totally do. There's a whole season that is that groundhog thing that you're thinking of. So if you want to listen to something about, if you want to listen to it to get an idea for how it works, he does a really excellent job, because there is basically this like cataclysmic thing that kills them all at the end of a day. So they have one day to figure out like clues and stuff to try to stop this thing from happening. And then they die, and then they respawn, and they're at the beginning of the day, and they have to do it again. And so the whole adventure was them trying to stop this like cataclysmic thing from happening.
That's super cool.
It was really clever and really cool. And just to like assure you, or like point out, I guess, like it can be done. And I think it's a really awesome thing to do. So the only reason I've never tried it in one of my games is that all of my players listen to the McElroy brothers and the Adventure Zone. So it would be kind of like, oh, you're ripping off them, Jordan. But if you have like new players who don't, then that's really clever.
Yeah, I like it. I think I want to tackle it at some point. So that's pretty good. I did see Karza asked a question in there before it gets too far off. He's talking about his group is approaching the final fight in Rise of Tiamat. Super big battle and such. Any advice DMing those big end of campaign scenarios? For me, whenever I'm going to end a big battle. So we kind of did it with McLancy Waddle, one shot that you played in.
Yeah.
And we had the big climactic battle at the end. To me, I think you have to put in a few showcase scenes for the characters that they can really get a chance to shine. And so but it won't be combat related. It'll be cinematic related. It'll be how you describe the scene, how you describe the lighting or what's going on, or how you have the music interact with it a little bit, or because you're really trying to build up your final, your final camera shot is the way I was thinking of it. But I also think always leave, I think, some type of tiny cliffhanger, right? So at the end of ours, you guys had a young bard that was following you who was going to watch the horses. And we did the big final battle. You guys beat it. It was great. Some things happened, but then you went back to your horses, and the boy was gone.
Yeah. And
we ended. So it was impactful. It was something to remember and something to draw them in. And even if we never play again, that's something that will be memorable of the session. So I think it's more about the cinematicness of it than it is about coming up with cool mechanics that they're going to have to fight on that last boss, because the last boss always is anticlimactic for a DM, in my opinion so far, because anytime there's one creature versus 5 players or 6 players, they just beat the crap out of that thing every time. So, I mean, unless it's completely overpowering them in some way, then it's just going to beat them. If it's even remotely close, because they get to go 7 times in a turn, and you get to go once or twice, you know what I mean? And so, I don't know, the one-off big battles don't seem to go, from a DM point of view, as good. So you have to dress it up cinematically. You have to introduce cool monologuing. You've got to describe the scene really. It's your chance to really be creative in describing what's going on, I think.
Yeah. From a like mechanical standpoint, I like to introduce skill challenges a lot. I just like skill challenges because they're fun, and I have my own particular way of doing a skill challenge, which I can talk about now or later, or don't need to. But and this might be different difficult because it's Rise of Tiamat, so it's kind of like the book has like, here's what the fight is. But I like to do fights leading up to the big fight. So for instance, in the last like culmination of my last campaign, they were trying to stop the resurrection of this dark purple dragon named Scatha, who was trying to like rule the world through mind control. And so they were trying to stop some drow that were going to resurrect this dragon. Now, there were like little fights against pockets of drow that led up to the main priestess and her cronies, and that was a huge fight. And so we had this awesome big fight. And then at the end of it, they won, but there was still an urgency to stop the ritual. So then we turned that into a skill challenge. So does the skill challenge actually stop the ritual? And they ended up failing the skill challenge, so the ritual did happen, which then escalated. Like whether they succeeded or failed, it would have escalated into the next fight. So it kind of goes fight, skill challenge in the middle, and then another climactic big fight. And this time it was against the like risen Scatha who had come back. And they just got obliterated because it was an ancient dragon versus like level 8 characters. So they all died, and then the twist, because it's kind of fun to have a twist, I guess. And if you can think of, and that's, again, this is hard because it's already a pre-written module, but like if you can have a fun twist where the players get to feel super powerful, that could be like they're infused with the energy of their god, or there's something else. So in my case, they died. They went to, not died, but they were attacked. And then in a flash of light, they went to this other plane of existence, which looked like just a nice grassy hill mountaintop. And they ended up meeting Savras, the god of divination, who played a key role through all of this. And Savras said, we needed you guys because the gods couldn't interfere with this, but we couldn't have Savras, or we couldn't have this evil purple dragon take over the world. So we're going to bestow you some gifts so that you can tackle this problem. So when they came back, I had new character sheets for them, and they were basically like CR20 monsters. And they were able to like wail on this dragon as these giant monsters, and they felt super powerful. And it was like, I don't know, it was just this really awesome like final battle that we had with them. And not every battle has to be like that, but the climactic ones, definitely it feels cool to have that. And so I like that structure of like just a regular fight to see how they do. That fight kind of impacts how the skill challenge is going to work out, and then the skill challenge impacts how the final battle is going to work out. And that could be anything from, like, off the top of my head, they do a battle, they have a skill challenge because the ruined temple they're in is caving in, so they maybe have to escape this ruined temple, which culminates into a fight where like rocks are falling from the ceiling, and because they weren't able to like stop the ritual that causes the temple to fall. And so you just add extra little moments that cause problems. But that was a long-winded answer, but
no, yeah. I think it's tough. That's the tough thing, because that's what you're building to in your whole campaign, and all of the stuff leads to it. So there's probably never going to be one right way to do anything, but there's probably lots of right ways, and there's lots of okay ways, and you're going to find very few wrong ways. But yeah, it's tough that's a tough one to do, I think.
And I think it's okay if it does feel a little anticlimactic, because that's hard. Like, it's just hard, and not every final battle is going to be like, whoa, this was amazing. Like, it could just be that the dice rolled in their favor and they're whatever. But I don't know. Another thing is you could fudge some dice and just kind of make it so they get a couple natural 20s to make the stakes a little higher. But
and it's interesting.
Environmental hazards, I think, are something that we don't use a lot in regular battles. And if you throw in some environmental hazards, like lava vents that are spewing heat, they can use those to their advantage, or they can also be disadvantage to the players in the sense that they're getting damage taken, or something happens, so.
Yeah, and I don't know about other players, but all the one that I've played with so far, I might have set up a battle where I thought it was going to be very good, and they just walk through it like nothing.
Yeah.
And when I talked to them about it, they still liked the battle. Like, they loved it. I didn't at all, because I felt like, it wasn't even a challenge for them. They didn't even get sweat. I don't even think I hurt any of them. Mm-hmm. But when I'm talking to them 2 or 3 days after, they loved the battle. So don't underestimate how much fun your players are having, even if they walk through whatever you thought was going to be challenging or didn't end up being challenging, because they have just as much fun, beating things up too. So it sometimes we try to make a balanced fight for ourselves because we want it to be balanced and challenging. But for them, they're just there to use their characters' abilities and, you know, get some treasure and level up. So
Yeah.
we got to remember. So that's pretty good. Good question from chat there. Lots of people in there. So Tuesday night was Tomb of Annihilation, the Adventure League, and it was interesting. They Anarsis, our GM, said he did an article for Adventures League. They did an article on him running a game, and he posted it in his area. So if you go back and you watch that, I think he posted a link to it. They interviewed him about how it is running an Adventure League's game online, and so it was pretty good. So I thought that was kind of fun. My barbarian made 3rd level. This is one I get to play in, so I'm super excited. I'll talk about my character all day long. I have to decide before we play again if I'm going to be a Storm Herald or a Zealot. Those are my big choices coming up because I want to play those. But super fun. We had some really good jungle fights. We have a good party of NPCs with us that are helping us out. Like our guide is a pretty tough guide, and we have a cleric that we're helping with a quest, but we're starting to realize she might be pretty high level because she's throwing out some spells that are pretty cool. What is it called? It's not, is it Sacred Guardians, or it's a 3rd level spell or 2nd level spell, I think, is very good. Like, we had not realized how good this spell is. You might look it up. It's an AoE spell that fires off a cleric of some sort that's about a 15-foot circle, and it's 2d8 damage every turn some creature's in that, just constantly.
Oh, it's like a zone that they take damage in?
Yes, and what we've done is we've kind of placed our bodies in between her and the mobs, the creatures, the things we're fighting, so they can't hit her, which means it doesn't drop her concentration. So it's just like this big damage hit happening every single time it's the creature's turn. And it was like, you don't come across a lot of spells that do that in D&D, so that's a good one. You know, keep an eye out for that one. That was really cool. So we've been having a lot of fun. We're in the jungles fighting cool stuff. Good players. Good. PB was back. PB was on a iPad of some sort, I think, and playing. So it's super awesome to see her back in gaming with us, and we had a lot of fun. Wednesday night, Crypts of Kelemvor. We played a 2nd session of that. Not unfortunately, because these guys are great and they're having a lot of fun. We need one more session. We didn't quite get through the whole thing. So when everybody says if we're going to play Crypts of Kelemvor, for me it's a 3-part session. So just keep that in mind because of the way all the battles roll out. But they had fun. It's a Dragonborn fighter, a Yuan-Ti bard, and a Kobold sorcerer. And my players right now are super creative, come up with cool ways, had really fun. And it feels like 3 players is such a good number for a D&D 5e, because it feels like things are still challenging to them. It doesn't feel like they're just walking through everything. They're not getting out without a scratch or two, but it's not anything they can't handle. So and for some reason, the difference between a 3-player and a 4-player, I'm just starting to find is very different, which is very weird.
They get a moment to shine too. Like, because there's just fewer players, they like have that, like, I helped out and I did this, as opposed to like, oh, I granted advantage to other player, you know, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Combat feels more fluid, goes by a little quicker because you don't have so many things going on, and you can really focus on it. So I don't know, I'm liking small size parties for D&D 5e right now, because I've done 6 and 7 at this point, size for Storm King's Thunder. And man, when you do a battle with 7 players in D&D 5e and they're 5th level, it takes an hour to get through one round combat, you know, because everybody's got a million things they want to do. So I'm starting to like the small group play for D&D 5e. So that's been pretty fun. But we're going to get one more night of that. I think it might be Wednesday again, and we'll finish that one up. They're good. They've all got voices. They're all creative. They've got mega background. They've been typing in Discord about their background and how they fight for 3 weeks now. And I'm just like, these guys are into their characters, which is super fun. Because when you have that enthusiasm at your table, your job is 100 times easier when they're that into their character, you know, so it's so good.
No, I caught the tail end of it. It looked like everybody was having lots and lots of fun. So, yeah.
It's cool. It was really fun. Borderlands is my Thursday night game, and this is interesting. I didn't even write it in the notes. I experimented with a downtime play session. So they've made it back to camp, and I told them they had just raised up a level while they were out at, out adventuring. And I told them they could have their hit dice while they were out adventuring, but the only way they could get their abilities or spells or new powers or new whatever is they had to be back at town, right? So they immediately beat feet back to town because they wanted all their new stuff. And when they got there, I said, okay, I want the town to advance a month in time. I want things to happen. I want you to help out. I want to see what you guys are going to do with a month time of you realizing you're not going to go on any adventures. There's nothing going on in town that you need to investigate or none of that stuff. Pure downtime session. And it worked really well. Like each of the characters found things they could do that would either help people that are there. So like they built the wall around the camp that they didn't have before. So that got finished. One of the players raised a protective totem that he had a vision from his brand new god. He decided to multi-class. So he's a second level fighter, first level cleric. And we had to explain how out in the middle of the wilderness did you all of a sudden just become a cleric and get powers in a day, right? So, but we've been building up to it, and it finally came out that he has the powers he's been granted. He's raised this totem up, and they built it, and it's a protector of this camp that they have to keep things up. And then we had other people doing stuff. They were investigating how to create poison. Some people made potions. Some people started planning how they were going to build a better dock so that more ships could come in to the camp. And so I thought it was really cool. So my idea is that I would do these sessions maybe once every 4 or 5 after regular 4 or 5 adventuring sessions, and then come back with like a downtime session that's all about advancing the world around us in time. So it worked out really fun. I still should be broadcasting it, but we haven't. But it's been a good game. It's a game that I get to explore and try out. This is the game that I only prep 1 hour before we start.
Yeah.
Like nothing I do at all for this game until 1 hour before, and we just go with it. And it's been really good. It's helped me learn to improvise and learn how to think on the fly. And so it's been pretty fun. I won't say that I would do it for every adventure campaign, but you do need to do it to push yourself to be ready for what they could possibly do.
Maybe well, this is just a random thought, but if you don't want to stream the game, because you are streaming like every other game you play in, so it kind of makes sense to have one that you don't want to stream, but like maybe stream or record your prep. Like I know a lot of people would find that interesting, especially for such a unique game where it's you're only prepping an hour before. Like that could be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think eventually I'm going to talk these guys into letting me broadcast it because I think it's going to work out. And I think it might be maybe my podcast version. Because I've been thinking about I want to do one that's non-video and is meant for podcasts. So we go out of our way a little bit to say, oh, I rolled a 17 and I got a +3 for this bonus. And that gives me a 20. So that people are listening understand why it's not just like, okay, I rolled dice. They can't see the screen, so they don't know necessarily what you rolled if they're just listening to it, right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about doing one because, again, I'm always experimenting with campaigns and how to run them and how to do things. And I think this one might be the one where I experiment. What is it like to run a podcast campaign where it's just voice, everything is about listening, nothing's about visual anything, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that'll be pretty fun. And then my final thing, as I've taken up a whole bunch of time, last night I went to Marmalade Dog 23. That's at Western Michigan University, holding their gaming convention, and I volunteered to run a game of Mass, the new generation. We had Graybeard showed up and played, sat down next to me and played, but then we had 4 people I'd never met, 1 person that had played the game before, 3 people that had never played it before. And we had a fantastic session of creating characters, creating a superhero, teenage angsty team, and going through like a fun adventure where they fought a villain and they won and they realized there's more to the story. And just a really cool thing. And it's those type of games, these Powered by the Apocalypse games, 2d6 plus a stat game that have become super popular in the last couple of years, are super fun from a narrative standpoint. They're so creative to say, because your powers are just like, you have electricity powers. Okay, so that's all it'll say on your thing. And you'd be like, and so all through the night, the person would ask me, can it shoot out like lightning? And I'm like, hey, you tell me how your powers work.
Yeah.
How does, what, you tell me what's happening.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is cool. And I'm like, okay, we're in a warehouse and the bad guy's crushing, some crates. And they're like, well, what's in the crates? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me what's in the crates. And they're like, oh, it's really cool technological stuff, because you're bringing a lot of the players into the creative process from the beginning, in the middle, all the way to the end. So it becomes a storyline that we all have agency in. I like to use that word recently. And we all have like a horse in the race, almost, of we want it to be a good story, and it's not just the DM saying this is what's happening. The players get to jump into. So it's a little bit more freewheeling. It's a little bit harder for somebody who comes from a structured RPG, because I could tell one of the players looked like a very solid D&D player, maybe had played no other game, and they're looking at their character sheet thinking like, well, where's all my actions? Where's all my spells? Where's all my abilities? And in Powered by the Apocalypse games, it's more about kind of making up stuff on the fly. You don't have to have a set move. You don't have to say, oh, I'm going to use my combat action, and then I'm going to use my second wind, and I'm going to do this. It's not like that at all. It's just being narrative in the fights, and it's super fun. So I liked it. When we're done with today's show, I'm driving back over, and I'm going to get a whole bunch more gaming in today, see what I can get in. I might try to play, or I might offer to run something else. So today's our show, and then tomorrow night, interview with CJ from Don't Stop Thinking. Great YouTube channel if you're brand new to Dungeons and Dragons and you want to know about classes or how to play, or if you're brand new to GMing. He's done some GMing stuff too, and he has a creative videos. He does animation for his videos, and they look really good. He's a really creative guy, and definitely check out his channel. So it's Don't Stop Thinking on YouTube, and we're gonna get to interview him tomorrow night.
Sweet.
And that has been my week.
Yeah. Speaking of the Mask game, where you're powered by Apocalypse and making kind of rather than like looking at your sheet and being like, okay, I've got like attack A or attack B, and I just have to choose between the two of them. And that is kind of like what D&D is, and I like D&D because of that. But these more like narrative-driven systems are interesting, much like Numenera. Which brings me into the Numenera game that I played on Monday.
Segue.
It was a really combat-heavy game, and Numenera is interesting in combat because, the way I phrased this, I think I was writing down because I wanted to make sure I get it correctly. But like in Dungeons and Dragons, if you use your action for not an attack, you can often feel like you wasted your action. So let's say, for example, in the Numenera game, our party got split up. Silica decided to go off by herself and got in a hole full of a bunch of, she like fell down a passageway into this like cavernous region, and it was full of a whole bunch of like weird egg sacs. And these weird slugs were coming out of these egg sacs. And it turns out that they're these parasitic mind control slugs. So they're trying to like latch onto your spinal cord so that they can control you. And it is jumping at her, and she's trying to fend it off. Meanwhile, we're looking for her. We ended up finding her, and we went down into the caverns, and combat breaks out because there's all these slugs around here. Well, one of the slugs attacked one of our other party members, and I used my entire action to pull the slug off of him before it could do that. Like I had to rip this thing off of his flesh and like toss it aside. And I felt like a badass because I rolled a really high like might roll, my strength roll basically, and I pulled this thing off, and that was my action. But in D&D, I would be like, well, I could either attack twice and do a bunch of damage, or I could try to like pull that off and not do any damage. And it kind of is this weird, like, did I waste my turn because I didn't actually attack? Did I waste my turn because I didn't cast a spell? And I like Numenera because I like D&D, but I enjoy the fact of Numenera that you can have these story-driven combats. And we were talking about it after the show, so this wasn't on the air, but just how Numenera does like this collaborative kind of storytelling combat where there's not really initiative, there's not really and a turn order. It's just kind of like, what do you want to do? And then you roll it. And so I could just say I hit it with my hammer, but it was better for me to say, I'm going to rip this thing off and like throw it over there, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to try and like delay this guy, and I want to like parry him and push him back. And it's like, okay, you want to push him back and try to like trip him up, do another might roll. Like you're pushing him with this. And so I get a roll every round. Like I get to do something cool, but it's this like narrative kind of driven thing. And that was just an epic fight. Like, and it was after that I realized, that I super enjoy combat in general, but I really enjoy combat in Numenera now. But our GM, Mike, he was like not really into combat that much. He's like, Numenera is fun for combat, but it's not a combat driven game, so we don't do it as much. Whereas like a game of D&D, you have to have some kind of combat in the night. I mean, you don't have to, but like it's kind of like,
it would be hard to do a campaign without it.
Yeah. And so like a typical night of D&D will have 2 or 3 fights for me. But a typical game of Numenera, we've gone whole sessions without having any combat. But I really like the combat. In Numenera, there are these devices called ciphers, which are kind of like one-time use magic items. And one of mine was like a big explosion. And so in order to like try to take out as many of these guys as possible before we basically ran away because we were too scared. And Silica had like this weird mind control thing on her. So we're like, we got to get her out of here and see if we can get this thing off. I used one of my ciphers. So I have this like robotic arm, and I set my arm out, and a bomb basically came out of my arm and like fired, kind of like Iron Man style. And I ended up doing all this cool ice damage to everybody because we had to roll for the damage type. And then Wylock, our like basically mage of the group, created this like force field wall to protect us while we like ran out of there and escaped. But it was like down to the wire whether we thought Silica was going to live or not, which then segues into the other thing I wanted to talk about, which was like character death and keeping that real. Like you could die in this game is something that I have not been doing as a DM very well. My characters are really overpowered, and I'm trying now to throw deadly encounters at them in our home game that I'm running, because I want them to feel like death is a real thing, but they don't feel like that at all. Like they're just so stupid overpowered, and they can heal for so much. And even when somebody drops down, it's usually within like a couple rounds that they get back up because they're healed somehow via healing word or cure wounds or something like that. So I don't know. It was kind of this eye opener with both the Numenera game, because I'm like, man, we could die. Like this is a real thing. And that state of urgency was just right there. And we were panicked the whole time, or at least I was, I should say. That segues into, I'm using the word segue too much, but that segues into
proud sponsor of the show.
Yeah. Our sponsor of the show, Segway. Yeah. That turns into my Adventure League game where 2 people died in our Adventure League game. And I've never been in a D&D game, and I haven't killed any of my players before. Or I've never been in a D&D game where somebody's died, because I don't play a lot. But the games that I've DM'd before, I've never killed anyone yet. So it's kind of like, holy cow. And he was just rolling the dice, but we made some really poor decisions. We're playing through Sunless Citadel, which is in Tales of the Yawning Portal, an older adventure. And this is kind of a difficult adventure. For some reason, our fighter decided to not like check the door to see if it was like trapped or anything behind it. And he's just like, I'm done with this. I'm going to open the door. And he flings open the door, and there's 35 goblins on the other side of this door, like packed into this room. He instantly gets stabbed by a goblin. So we shut the door, and we're just like, well, what do we do? And we're like, and our wizard was just, or our druid, he was like, well, we can take this. We'll just funnel them through the door and like kill them off one by one, thinking that they're going to be like dumb goblins. But the dungeon master wasn't playing him like dumb goblins. And so it became readily apparent as we were trying to like kill the goblins that they were smarter than that. And I finally had to turn to our druid and just, oh, sorry, I have the hiccups. This is awful. I'm on stream. But I had to turn to the druid and finally say, they're not as dumb as you think they are. Like, we need to leave. And he's like, no, I think we can take them. And then the DM finally said, they're not as dumb as you think that they are. You probably need to leave. Like, hint, hint, I'm going to murder you all if you stay here.
Yeah.
Being a bard, I have cure wounds. So I was like running. I'd run in, I'd cast cure wounds, and then I'd run back out because I was hiding behind these pillars for cover. Finally, we leave, but as we're leaving, there's a couple of stragglers that are just like, no, guys, like stay with it. We can totally fight. We can totally do this. And I'm like, we totally can't. And the sorcerer died. Like she went to 0. She rolled her death saving throws and she died. And then the gnome paladin did the same thing. He's like, well, I'm going to fight to the death. And I'm like, that's your call. Like, I'm a little more attached to my character than I guess you are.
I'm out.
I don't know. I was like, we need to just leave and regroup, guys. And everyone else was like, yeah, I guess so. And so he died. It'll be interesting to see if they come back with new characters next week or if they're just kind of like, well, I guess I died. I'm done for a little bit. But
yeah. Indoor Adventurer asked about what happens when a player dies in a session. Like, and it really depends. Like, so Adventurers League, it's probably going to be something like where you come back, like you're saying, with a new character in the next session. And
that's exactly.
You don't know who you're going to get to play with.
Like,
but
she
if you're
was
in a
just
campaign,
out, so
yeah, if you're in a campaign that like me or Jordan are running and it's our home game or whatever, you have to. We had one that died in our Storm King's Thunder campaign. The black slime, the black pudding killed our player. And so at the end of that, we did the very next scene. This was super cool. The very next time we played, most of the session was about the burial and funeral of that player's character.
Yeah, that's fun.
And then in the interim, on a different day, not on our normal night, I did a session where he rolled up a new character that was going to join the group. And we played through an adventure so he could introduce that character. And then we could work him into why does he suddenly stumble upon the party. And then when he got there, I just let it roll. Either the group's gonna, accept the player in or not, and then we'll move on and we'll figure out another way for something to happen. But mostly the players are good because they know that their friend's coming back in for the most part. Yeah. So they don't put the screws to that person typically, unless they're just kind of joshing with them or whatever. But I think a lot of people will handle it differently. And if it's in the middle of the session, like if you die the first 10 minutes into your session and you've got a 4-hour session going, you're probably just going to be sitting there hanging out because there's not a lot of time for the GM to say, well, let's stop everything and let's let you do a new character. Let's go through that. Because D&D characters take at least, it's got to be more than an hour to build, right?
I mean, I would say you could do it in an hour, but like if you're particular and you have to level up, like if you're level 5 and you have to make another level 5 character, then it'll take you an hour or so.
Yeah, and if you wanted to have background, you want to have a true attachment to it, not just DCC-wise, where I'm just going to throw another 0 level in and we'll see what happens kind of thing. I think D&D has... I've seemed to spend a lot of time on D&D when I make those characters. Other systems, maybe not so much, but... so I think it's interesting. So it's a good question. There's not a great way to handle it.
I've seen...
Players, be careful. Don't die.
I've heard of people just leaving. It's like if you died within the first 10 minutes, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go home and I'll come back next week kind of thing with a new character.
Let me know how it turns out.
Yeah, because it's just like there's no reason for me to be here. And definitely for Adventures League, they just hung out for like 30 minutes because they died and they were like, I guess I'll just like watch for the rest of the game, and see how it goes. But... Yeah. Adventure League is weird because you do just like next week, I probably won't be playing Sunless Citadel. I'll probably be playing something else because our DM is gone. So you just kind of sit down and you're like, okay, your spell slots are back. Like you all know each other for some reason. You're like running around. But a game like
Adventure League's not worried about tying in background.
Yeah, no. But a game that you're talking about where it's your home game and you are kind of worried about that, then it becomes a little more like, well, do you trust this new guy that came in? Like everybody knows that it's your friend that wants to play with you, but you kind of like role play it like somehow. And I don't know. There's a great movie called The Gamers that was made in Seattle with a bunch of like nerds who made this like role playing game movie, and it's super funny. And I think it's on YouTube. You can probably find it. for rent or something, but it's called The Gamers. And one of the characters in that movie dies, and then they like find a new character. It's like, oh, is this your new character? And they're like, yeah. And they walk up to him, and he's just like, I would like to join you. And the other party members go, you seem trustworthy. Join us. And it's like, I remember thinking like, isn't that how it goes though? Like, you know, you want your friend to play with you. So you're kind of just like, well, yeah, you can come with us because let's just go back to the story. Like, this is your new character. We get it. So.
Yeah, and I was bringing in new player. It's the same thing as if you bring a new player into your game, right? Like, say somebody's schedule no longer works. So you have to kind of write their character out of the story.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not dead, but they're gone. And now you've found another person that's going to, okay, they're going to take the seat. Well, you still got to bring that character in too. And if it's important to have a good storyline, if that's what you're trying to do with your campaign, then that becomes much more of a job for you as a GM. Whereas if storyline's not as big a deal for you and it's just about action combat and dungeon delving and that we don't really care about that, then it's not such a hard thing for you. So you set up how difficult it is going to be for you, because if you put emphasis on story, then you've got to do a lot. Like I did extra sessions to bring our new characters in for the Storm King's Thunder one, because we've had lots of people come in and out of that game, and we had to figure out, well, why is this person here now, and why is this person gone, and how did the new person get here? We've had one resurrection. They were high enough level that their bard had died in a battle, and one of the NPCs felt bad and offered to pay for the resurrection. So they took the body to the next town, paid, and had it resurrected. Because in Dungeons & Dragons, the reality is, I think a resurrection is like 5,000 gold pieces or something like that. It's not
I don't know off the top of my
terrible.
head, but it's expensive.
Yeah, it's not terrible if you're 5th level and past.
Yeah.
Like before that, unattainable. But the moment you hit 5th level and past, all of a sudden, resurrection's a very easy thing to acquire. And you can move on that way too.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't the Path of the Zealot Barbarian, don't they get to like resurrect for free? Isn't that, yeah? Oh, you're muted, I think.
Oh yeah, no material cost. They can just do it. That's one. Yep.
Yeah.
And they're doing like divine power on their strikes. It's going to be good.
And this kind of like bringing this full circle back to that original question that we got about how can you make that final battle more intense or more cinematic? Definitely kill somebody. Like drop them down to 0. Like maybe and I'm just thinking back to when I was playing Tomb of Horrors, and Tomb of Horrors is obviously like super difficult and meant to just kill the players. But like the level of panic and urgency with my players when I dropped like 3 of the 5 of them all at once through one ability that the Lich had. They were just like, what do we do? And it's like, yep, you're all down. Like, drink your healing potions. What are you going to do now? Kind of a thing. Maybe your big bad evil guy has a like power word kill, and the players don't know how often he can do this, but maybe he can only do it once, or you re-roll it on a 1d6. On a 6, he can cast it again, kind of a thing. But like starting off that fight with, oh, you're like the full hit point fighter, like roll a Constitution saving throw. Now you're either at half your hit points or you're at 0. Like that would be intense. And just make up a spell like that. You know,
you want to panic your party, right? This one threw my party into the biggest panic I've ever seen.
Yeah,
they were tracking down something that had killed a ranger in the forest, I think. And so somebody had followed some tracks and they went to a cave, and they're all big, bad, tough adventurers. And they thought, oh, it's probably going to be something like an owl bear or some creature, you know, it'll be bad. But so we're going to go in the cave, and they all lined up in that cave entrance. And that's when the Oni, which is a form of a giant, hit them with Cone of Cold. And all of them took a huge hit from damage immediately, every one of them. And all of a sudden they scattered like mice, and one ran away and ran up a tree. The others didn't want to be next to anybody else. And the Oni then turned himself invisible and started stalking the players, because the minute you hit them with an AoE, they scatter. So then he was invisible. He would pop out and hit somebody who was scattered. They were so freaked out the whole time in that whole battle. And really, they weren't in a ton of danger because he didn't really have much else he was going to be able to do. But I've never seen them panic and play their characters so poorly. Like they were in literal panicked. Their heads, they couldn't figure out what to do, and they were making really bad choices, and I was loving it. And it was just a really good session. So hit them with a big AoE of some sort where it doesn't kill them, but all of a sudden it's like 4 or 5 dice of damage of some sort. Man, they just freak out.
No, it's the same thing with the one shot that I wrote. Like they fight a dragon at the end, and all of my players, when I ran it, they were in this nice little like funnel shaped cone. And so I did my like cone of fire, and it hit all of them, and they were like, maybe we shouldn't have been in that marching order like that. And I'm like, that was your call. Like, you guys walked in like this. So, but you're right. Yeah. And then they scattered because everybody took, what was it, like 3d8 damage or something ridiculous. And so most of them were down anywhere from 60 to 70% of their hit points, you know? So,
yep, it's fun.
But overall, I'm having a lot of fun with Adventure League. Like, now I'm kind of in a consistent group, and although that's going to change next week because our DM just said that he's not going to be there the next 2 weeks, but I'm seeing the fun of it. If you can get in a consistent group and kind of play with the same people, there's like 3 people at my table that I really, really enjoy, and they're just fun players. They haven't played D&D before. I think I was talking about this with you off camera last week, where I was just like, I should just volunteer to run a game for you guys, because they were kind of like, they don't really know how to play, and they came to Adventures League because they like the idea of D&D, but they don't know where to go to like find it. And I was like, I should run a game for you guys. So that would be fun.
I'm in that space now that when I bump into people that say, hey, I haven't played D&D before, but I've been hearing about it or been thinking about wanting to do it. I'm like, it's impossible for me to not say to them, oh, let me run a game for you. I'll run a game for you. Let's play some D&D. Like, anybody that's new and wants to play, and they tell me, it's like I'm irresistible, and I can't not run a game for them because I love it. They're the best players ever. Are the new ones that have just started hearing about it, and it's just I'm just having a great time.
Like finding them. Your Crypts of Kellenvor. We were just talking about the lady that's playing in that with you. Like, she was just really excited about playing D&D, and it's been a fun experience for you and her. So
yeah, definitely, it's so good. And it's just introducing games to people is fun, you know, like when you have it. And my question was, for Adventure League, when are we going to see or hear about the Jordan running the Adventure League game?
I know. Well, they're good on DMs right now, but I was gonna go in, because you have to do a background check, I guess, in order to be a DM for Adventures League, which is no big deal. Right. Like, I'll pass a background check, but like, the DMs are interacting with kids and things like that. So I'm sure that Wizards of the Coast has that safety net there, just to make sure that they don't get the super weirdos trying to be like, well, I'm gonna run a game and then I'm gonna like hit on this girl or something. And it's like, no, you have to be a little more professional if you're gonna be a DM. But one of the guys that I was playing with, he took the plunge. He was just like, no, they need a DM. So I like volunteered to be a DM, and I'm like, oh, cool. And I should do the same, but I honestly don't get to play that much. And so it's been fun to have, at least I can play in Adventures League, you know, like I can run these other games and I can do that. And I say I don't get to play much, but I'm playing Numenera and Adventures League now. But like before, I was always running games. And so it's kind of fun to just like, I like my Bard. I'm leveling up my Bard. Although I said this on Twitter, I lost my Bard Mini. I think I left it at Adventures League, and I'm like, it's probably gone forever now. So we went to the game store yesterday, and I bought a new Mini so that I can like whatever. And I'm gonna try and use some of my wife's acrylic paints and see if I can't like learn how to paint minis. I'm gonna watch some YouTube videos. That's my next D&D, expanding my hobby of D&D. I'm going to try and get into this whole like miniature painting thing that people do.
Nice. It's fun. This was a question I also had about, like, I haven't asked my game store, but on the night they run Adventure League, is that the only night they run Adventure League? Is there a certain night at your game store that you're going to? It's only one night a week?
It's only one night a week, yeah. And usually it's Wednesdays, but the game store can decide when they want to run it. So my game store runs it on Thursdays, actually. So. And
do they let people run games that are not Adventure League on that night?
I don't know about that night, but I know in general they let people run games. Like, I think you have to reserve the table, and you might have to buy so many like packs of Magic cards or something in order to allow them to be like, okay, if everybody spends $5, we'll let you have this table for 4 hours, kind of a thing.
Yeah, because I was thinking my game store, and I don't want to dig on them because I think they're a pretty good game store,
Mm-hmm.
but their business nights that they let people come in and use tables in the game store are mostly reserved for card players versus letting groups of RPers come in,
Right.
RPG people come in and use tables. So, because I went in there to say, you know, can we run a game here if I just bring in a bunch of people and we want to sit here and play a game in a game store? Because why wouldn't you want to play with your friends in the middle of a game store? That just sounds quintessential D&D, right? And,
Yeah.
But they only have Wednesday night that they do that. All their other nights, their tables are used for card tournaments and other stuff. And I was just like, man, it just feels like you're missing the boat if you're not offering that for people to come in and just play at your store. Because nobody's going to come into that store week after week after week and not buy stuff.
Yeah.
You can't be surrounded by super cool gaming stuff and not buy it. There's no way. So it just
I think the
surprises
card
me.
model is just more profitable, which makes sense because people are
They
like,
make tons of money.
yeah, like they're buying new cards, they're coming to play, they're just like, oh, you have that card, I better buy like 4 more booster packs and see if I can get it. So I totally understand that D&D is not bringing in as much money, but I know my game store has Saturday nights is play whatever board game you want to play, and they have one group that plays D&D in the back. And then the rest of them are just like, you can just show up and play whatever board games they have. Like, no, you don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to do anything. Like, the idea is just try board games and see if you like them. And maybe you'll pick them up is kind of the idea. But they have definitely some people that play D&D in the back. So,
all right. Well, we need to make a pledge here that if you win the lottery or I win the lottery, we're gonna build that game store. And every night you can come and play Dungeons and Dragons at a table. I don't care.
That would be
if
fun.
Magic makes us more money. We're gonna have tables for.
We've got lottery money,
Pathfinder,
so we're good.
Dungeons and Dragons, Numenera, whatever you want to play. There's gonna be tables for you. I swear it.
That's awesome. Sweet. Well, we're coming up. Anything else? We're coming up on our 50 minutes.
Yeah, this is the last show of this month. I would love to mention that next month on our show, I will be announcing our little, why did it just leave my head? Contest. Not really a contest, but if you subscribe to the Twitch channel next week's Saturday.
For the next month, right?
Yep, for the next month, I will be contacting you if you want me to run a one-shot with you and who knows, some of the cast members from other shows, maybe some new people that I meet.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to meet some people at the convention and try to get, look for people that I like, look for people that I get along with while I'm playing and say, hey, you should come play on my channel. So I'm going to try to do some networking while I'm there also today. So hopefully we'll have some new players for new stuff. So keep an eye out for that. So it's always the first Saturday morning Dungeons & Dragons show of the month. I offer a chance for you guys to play in a one-shot done by Lucien. And in fact, Indoor Adventure has gotten 3 games out of me. So he was one of the ones that took me up on it at the beginning of the month, and he's gotten 3 games. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a fun game. You guys can check that out on YouTube, on Sir Lucian's YouTube channel. Yeah. Or probably the VOD is probably still here on Twitch. But
I do highlights on the Twitch so that they're always there, but I also put it up on YouTube for those that want to go.
But it's so far a fun game. I caught the tail end of it this Wednesday, and it was fun. So good
dynamic lighting, good maps, good stuff. It's been, I love it.
Ogre zombies, it was great.
Ogre zombie. Rage zombie. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. The chat was especially awesome today. I see we have a Grip of the Green here and Cyberwolf. It's always fun to see you. So thank you guys so much for coming in. And Indoor Adventurer, you're awesome. And I should say, you guys, I should find a link to it. But Indoor Adventurer, I've been going to your YouTube channel, and you've only made like 2 or 3 videos, I think now, but like they're really, really awesome. So definitely check out Indoor Adventure's YouTube channel. I'll try to
post your link in there, Indoor.
Yeah, post your link in there, Indoor Adventure, because your channel's, you got some great videos. And I'll put a link in the doobly-doo of the description of this on YouTube. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out.
I don't know, Jordan. There's lots of people in chat. We should just keep going for a little.
Yeah,
longer.
I have errands to run though. I feel really bad.
Oh, you got a game tonight. You didn't even talk about it. You have a game tonight.
I do. Yeah, I have a game tonight. And they are going to explore Yuan-Ti Temple. So we're rescheduling because tomorrow is Easter and both April Fools, and I don't think they wanted to play on April Fools to see what I would throw at them.
You've got to do an April Fool's session, yeah.
April Fool's D&D game would be super fun, I think.
Yeah.
But no,
like,
it's Easter.
The monster rolled a 1. April Fool's, it's a 20.
Yeah. you run into an ancient blue dragon. April Fools, it's a gelatinous cube. Like,
Yeah.
Jordan, those are still bad things. And they're like, yeah, well. But no, yeah, we're going to play tonight. So I've got to prep my game, but I've also got some errands to run. Real life stuff. I'm doing this like children's improv game where we're going to like take suggestions from kids and make like a children's story from that. And so I have to go to rehearsal today and like learn how to improv for kids, apparently. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm really nervous as to how it's going to work. I got to trust the guy that's running it because I'm like, you want to do what now? But I signed up for it.
Gelatinous dragon. There you go. Just start smashing things together. Gelatinous dragon.
Gelatinous dragon. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. Yeah, check out Indoor Adventure and be sure to check out next Saturday for the Saturday morning D&D show. We're live on Twitch every Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific or Eastern time, I should say, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And that's it. With that, we're going to leave. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much. Bye.